is Guo Wengui. Guo is a self-proclaimed dissident from China.
But he's now a wanted man in his homeland.
The charges he's facing are very serious.
He is charged with fraud and money laundering, and as CBS 2's Alicia Reed explains.
Controversial Chinese billionaire.
Beijing is seeking his arrest.
Guo Wengui is also known as Miles Kwok. In the public eye, this name may be accused of being a criminal, but Miles also has tremendous support for his innocence.
Free Miles Kwok!
How did a Chinese tycoon end up in a U.S. jail without bail? Why is he the eyesore of both the U.S. and Chinese governments?
I think you are potentially China's #1 enemy. The government, not the people.
Some say he's a hero, others a villain. Or could he be a victim, a designer, or a rapper? Let's delve deeper to uncover the truth. Who is Miles Kwok? Born in 1968, Miles came from a poor village in China's Jilin province called Zhaozhago. His parents worked hard to raise 8 boys. Miles was the 7th. Miles grew up knowing what it was like to be hungry and cold. During the Cultural Revolution, the whole country was in chaos, and Miles caught the urge to thrive rather than just survive. At 7, he was selling popsicles in the village. By 12, watches and jeans. At 13, he had his own steamed bun shop. And by 15, he was fixing and flipping motorcycles. Afterwards, Miles moved back to his roots in Shandong. As a teenager, Miles was the guy known for the best motorcycles around. In 1985, he met the woman who'd become his wife, and soon they started a family. During this time, Miles's youngest brother remained by his side. Miles's elder siblings found themselves in respectable professions as well, ranging from teaching to law enforcement and military service, accompanying him on their journey towards a gradually improving and happier life. But in 1989, everything changed. That year, China was in turmoil. Students took to the streets of Beijing, demanding democracy and freedom.
Going to march. 10 minutes there. Why? I think this is my duty.
Feeling the pull to support the cause, Miles sold his motorcycle and gave all his cash to the student protesters. But the government wasn't just cracking down on the protesters. They went after anyone who supported them, including those who donated money. One day, in May 1989, Miles, his wife, 2 children, and his younger brother were gathering in Miles' office when 2 drunk cops barged in to arrest Miles. During the confrontation, the police fired 8 times. 2 bullets almost hit his wife, who was holding the baby, and 2 bullets hit his younger brother in the chest. That night, the police took Miles into custody while completely ignoring his brother. 2 days later, Miles's brother died in the hospital from the gunshot wound. Miles would end up being detained for 22 months in the Xingfeng Detention Center, a place that would forever change his life. In detention, Miles encountered many others who believed in the student movement and democracy. They were teachers, lawyers, writers, and young activists. Despite the lice, moldy food, and damp conditions, these brave people held on to their ideals. Miles watched as each of them were executed without any dignity. The sorrow of losing family, enduring unjust imprisonment, and spending 22 months in confinement, watching innocent, like-minded intellectual mentors put to a cruel death, ignited within Miles a new life purpose. The first thing Miles did upon his release was collect his brother's ashes from the crematorium. Miles's life was never the same from this moment. In the 1990s, following the new direction in China's policies, business opportunities could be found anywhere. With all his possessions confiscated from previous imprisonment, Miles had to start from scratch. His first gig involved carrying fuel savers by train from Beijing to Harbin, a job not for the faint-hearted. But it paid off. With the earnings and some new friends, he moved his family to Chengzhou. There, he co-founded a wooden furniture factory. During this period, Miles met Mr. He, who was introduced by his cellmate in Xingfang Detention Center. Mr. He, a friend and mentor, is a seasoned Beijinger, much older than Miles, and comes from a family with a strong scholarly background. Mr. He was profoundly inspired by Miles's spirit and firmly believes that he is destined to make a significant impact. Before long, Mr. He introduced Miles to a relative who was living in Hong Kong, Ms. Xia Ping. A successful businesswoman herself, Ms. Xia believed Miles had a strong intuition about real estate and high-end hotels. Ms. Xia Ping arrived in Zhengzhou and invested in Miles's venture, the Yuda Hotel, marking Hunan Province's first five-star hotel when Miles was only in his 20s. The Yuda Hotel soared to unprecedented success, marking a significant milestone in Miles's life. It transformed from a mere hotel into a landmark in Zhengzhou and across the Hunan Province. Along this path of success, as Miles expanded his network and met numerous businessmen and politicians, he never forgot the vow he made in front of his brother's urn. In 1998, Miles and his family moved to Beijing. By then, Miles had risen to become a wealthy magnate, owning multiple homes in the most exclusive parts of Beijing, driving the finest cars, and wearing the most luxurious clothes. His network across different circles kept expanding. Around 1998, he was already planning his next venture, the Pangu 7-Star Hotel. Foreseeing that Beijing would have the opportunity to host the 2008 Olympic Games, Miles bought a piece of deserted land covered in weeds and situated far from the city center in a village that was soon to become the Olympic Village for the Games. Just as Miles had suspected, in 2001, Beijing secured the chance to host the upcoming Olympic Games.
The Games of the 29th Olympiad in 2008 are awarded to the city of Beijing.
A victory that sparked widespread celebration across the nation. Yet the path that this victory led to was filled with political struggles and obstacles. Over the course of several years, Miles managed to acquire land in Beijing's prestigious Huhai district. Here, he constructed a courtyard house as a gift for his mother's 70th birthday. This district is renowned for its historical significance, housing residences of former royalty and current elites. Unfortunately, they viewed Miles as an outsider, branding him as new money and someone who didn't belong in their social circle. Pangu Hotel hit some major roadblocks right out of the gate. Construction was left hanging by Liu Zhuhua, who served as Beijing's deputy mayor and the brains behind the Olympic construction. Liu was the first to flex his muscles with his shady agenda to get his hands on this great piece of land, all to please one of his lovers. In 2003, Pangu fell victim to confiscation. Miles reported Liu Zhuhua's misconduct with video evidence to the authorities, leading to Liu Zhuhua's arrest. Pangu was then unsealed and returned to Miles. It seemed like Miles had won, but behind the scenes, Liu Zhuhua and his crew were plotting their revenge. When completed in 2008, Pangu Hotel outshone even the Yuda Hotel with its remarkable achievements. It brought great honor to China during the Beijing Olympics, earning admiration from numerous foreign media outlets and celebrities. This period marked the golden age for Miles and his family. It was also during this time that Miles's network extended far beyond China, with celebrities from various countries gathering at his Pangu residence. By this time, he and his family business had already become renowned on the Huron Rich List in China, with private jets, hundreds of cars, millions of pieces of antique furniture, and countless designer clothes. However, amid all the fame and fortune, Miles never forgot his original mission and goals. In 2013, there was a significant upheaval in the CCP government. Xi Jinping launched the so-called anti-corruption campaign, which essentially aimed to eliminate any potential political opponents.
坚持零容忍的态度不变， 做到有案必查、有腐必惩，让腐败分子在党内没有任何藏身之地。
As a result, numerous former high-ranking Chinese officials were ousted. Some were even arrested. Leading the charge was Wang Xishan, a former big shot in Beijing, who was once Liu Zhuhua's boss and friend. This crackdown turned China upside down, and Miles and his family were right in the middle of it. According to the internet, the Guo family was already a major shareholder of Founder Securities at that time, and also held a large number of shares in other stock exchanges. Of course, high-ranking CCP officials had long been eyeing to carve up this lucrative business. Within the circle of Beijing politicians Miles befriended was a close friend named Ma Jian, who served as the deputy minister of the Ministry of State Security at the time. As Ma Jian held numerous pieces of incriminating evidence against Wang Xishan, he became the center of a state-led investigation and was subsequently arrested. Wang Xishan suspected that Miles also held incriminating evidence against him. At the end of 2013, anticipating Wang Xishan's move to arrest him, Miles flew to Hong Kong, but Wang Xishan's retaliation had just begun. On January 10, 2015, while Miles was visiting in the UK, Pangu Plaza was swarmed by dozens of police cars and hundreds of officers encircling the building. During this raid, the police detained numerous Pangu employees and several of Miles's family members, including Miles's 5 brothers, his wife, and his young adult daughter. Using force during these types of raids was commonplace for the CCP, and so it was at Pangu that day. Police violently cleared out all the offices, using force on innocent employees. Miles would get a call a few hours after this horrible event. This man behind the call was Wu Jing, also known as Bruno Wu, a U.S. citizen holding an American passport, who navigated between the complexities of U.S.-China relations. His underlying identity, however, was that of a spy nurtured over an extended period by the Chinese Communist Party. Wu publicly registered under FARA in the United States and lobbied openly on behalf of the CCP. He was born into a family with a history of espionage. His grandfather provided legal defense for early leaders of the CCP a century ago, rescuing many communist officials from the opponent's Kuomintang prisons. Because of his deep generational ties to the CCP, Wu was able to live above the law in what is informally known as a death exemption plate. On January 20th, 2015, in an effort to gather more information about Miles's activities abroad, the CCP authorities released his wife and daughter, subjecting them to 24-hour surveillance. In the days that followed, several of Miles's family members and employees were also released. However, many endured inhumane treatment and torture, leading to lifelong disabilities. Among them, the CCP detained Miles's 3 brothers for a period ranging from 1 to 2 years. The CCP also established a special task force that appeared daily at Miles's company, conducting comprehensive surveillance of finances and personnel. Even today, despite having complete control over all of Miles's domestic assets, the CCP has repeatedly attempted to lure him back to China. At the end of 2016, the Dalian Task Force arrested Miles's daughter and his brother once again, using this as leverage to compel Miles to return to China to cooperate with the CCP. Repeatedly using his family as leverage, the CCP drove Miles to the edge. Faced with such dire circumstances, Miles's options were limited to either submission or resistance. Miles understood deeply that compliance meant self-destruction, as the CCP consistently oppressed and exploited the people, never demonstrating any semblance of justice or fairness. The deep-seated resentment and anger that Miles had carried for decades finally erupted. Having endured the intrusive malice of the CCP in China for 28 years, brought Miles to a point of no return. A pursuit of justice and freedom would expose the cowardice and shadow warfare of the CCP.
我用我28年的生命看到了他们的堕落。中纪委书记王岐山和公安部常务副部长傅政华如何会毁掉中国？不能是真正的腐败者去所谓就反腐，那可能是真反腐吗？郭文贵就是一面镜子，不但照妖还照假，真的假不了，假的真不了，一切都是刚刚开始。谢谢。我不是什么神秘人。
On January 26, 2017, Miles decided to sit in front of the camera. This marked his first ever public interview, making him the first Chinese individual to openly defy the Chinese Communist Party on camera and speak out against it. At this time, Miles's concerns extended beyond his family and career. He had abandoned all he had accomplished in the first half of his life and ventured onto a path that was both more difficult and more meaningful. Yet the core of the CCP responded to Miles's actions with a mixture of anger and fear, determined to erase him completely. In addition to being interviewed by certain overseas Chinese media outlets, Miles launched the whistleblower movement on YouTube, utilizing live streams and short videos to share his story. Twitter also became his platform for sharing disclosure whistleblowing documents. However, the CCP's efforts to suppress Miles had already reached the United States. In April 2017, his Twitter account faced its first temporary suspension, even though Miles had already amassed a considerable number of followers. On April 17, 2017, the CCP issued a red notice against Miles in an attempt to discredit him globally. In comparison to the scarce coverage of Miles's revelations, this news was extensively broadcast by major media outlets in China. 2 days later, the Voice of America interview was abruptly terminated by the host due to Miles's attempt to disclose information about the Wang Xishan family and Hainan Airlines. This marked the first instance of a broadcast interruption since VOA began airing in 1942. The host verified in subsequent interviews that they had been instructed by senior CCP officials to abruptly terminate the program. The former senior CCP official, Liu Yanpeng, repeatedly sought to arrange another meeting with Miles in an attempt to achieve reconciliation. He tried to persuade Miles to cease his public revelations by appealing to his and Miles's personal relationship and emphasizing national security concerns. As a CCP representative, Liu Yanpeng also promised to release his family and employees.
这个郭美和他母亲他们娘俩就要到你这儿去团聚了。我们也营造点好的氛围。大家都冷静一下。你要敢跟我拍胸脯，说从5月3号，从明天开始，你就不发声了。我今天夜里边我不睡觉，我去一家一家去跑去，我也能保证明天开始，这边也什么声音都没有。
While it may seem like Liu was acting in good faith, this would prove to be the brewing of a deceitful scheme. In May 2017, Miles's family and Liu, along with CCP officials, flew from Beijing to New York. Little did Liu know that the scheme he and 3 other CCP operatives devised to secretly arrest Miles had already come under surveillance by the U.S. government. On May 24th, Liu and 3 other CCP operatives were stopped by the FBI on their way to Washington, where they were informed that they had violated U.S. laws. Despite the fact that the CCP was instructed not to meet Miles again and were given 48 hours to leave the United States, they did not comply. Liu contacted Miles and arranged to meet again the following day. Soon after their meeting, Liu hurriedly left for the airport. Upon their arrival at the airport, the FBI seized all of their electronic devices. The FBI also reached out to Miles to inquire about his situation. Due to the FBI's intervention, Miles's wife and daughter were able to remain in the United States. Unfortunately, Liu Yanping's departure did not mark the end of the CCP's activities. Another high-ranking CCP official, Sun Lijun, who was in Washington at the time, had a tactical conversation with Miles in yet another attempt to coerce Miles to return to China.
文贵兄啊，你还真的这次是误解我了。我来呢是美国司法部邀请的，主要就是来谈这个网络安全合作的。而且呢，我到了美国之后呢，已经跟他们谈了2轮了。谈的也都不错。你也可以问他们，在谈的当中，包括 FBI 也在，我只字未提郭文贵3个字。
He lied. He was in New York and building up his connections for a new plan, lobbying for Miles's deportation. Some got hopes and dreams, we got ways and means, the supreme dream team always up with Pras Michel, a former member of the popular American hip-hop group The Fugees, has been convicted of more than 10 crimes by the District Court of Columbia, Washington, D.C. He was engaged in illicit lobbying for the CCP with his personal attorney Higginbotham, who was also holding a position as a senior congressional affairs official at the DOJ. He not only participated in the many attempts to deport Miles, earning millions, but also assisted Joe Low in money laundering activities in the United States. On May 8, 2017, Joe Low, Pras Michel, and Elliot Broidy, Deputy Finance Chairman of the Republican National Committee at the time, flew to Shenzhen together, where they spent the entire day in discussions with Sun Lijun, the then Vice Minister of Public Security, who had been waiting for them at the Four Seasons Hotel. In June 2017, Elliot Broidy sought the assistance of RNC's Finance Chairman Stephen Wynn to facilitate the deportation of Miles. Due to Miles's visa nearing expiration at the time, Broidy hoped that Wynn could help prevent Miles from obtaining a new visa. Wynn personally relayed information about Miles during a private dinner with President Trump at the White House. Wynn later informed Broidy that the State Department was examining the matter. However, Trump ended up shelving the deportation of Miles. Broidy received millions of dollars for his lobbying efforts during this campaign, while Steve Wynn secured a license for a casino in Macau. To ensure Miles remained in deep water and posed no threat in the future, CCP plotted another scheme. On July 18, 2017, Miles and his family went on a cruise in the yacht called Lady May. Suddenly, the ship lost control. The captain found it impossible to steer the vessel in the intended direction. Approximately 100 meters away from Lady May, a coal barge vessel was anchored. The consequences of a collision is unimaginable. Miles and his family were just one drift away from death. Being equipped with a sophisticated onboard computer system, the ship ought not to have had a malfunction like this. It's almost as if someone else had control of the ship. On September 6, 2017, Miles submitted a political asylum application to the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The CCP, as expected, attempted to obstruct the submission of the asylum application. On September 12th, hackers affiliated with the CCP military launched an attack on the law firm representing Miles in his asylum case. They compromised all network devices and machines and seized numerous pieces of information related to Miles. Despite everything that had happened, Miles's efforts to counter the Chinese Communist Party persisted. By this time, Miles had already gained significant influence. October 2017, Miles was invited to give a speech at the Hudson Institute, a U.S. think tank based in Washington, D.C., to disclose more information about high-ranking CCP officials and their ties to Hainan Airlines. The speech was scheduled on October 4th. However, just a day before the event, Miles was informed that the speech had been postponed, that is, effectively canceled. The organizers offered different explanations for the cancellation multiple times, but eventually admitted it was because of threats from within the Chinese Communist Party. The day after his speech was canceled, Miles opted to hold a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., where he officially unveiled intelligence regarding corruption within the Wang Xishan family and Hainan Airlines. He also revealed the CCP's big plan to corrupt the free world by using media, money, sexual bribery, and fomenting unrest in the United States. Miles sounded a worldwide alarm about the CCP emerging as a global concern affecting everyone. However, Miles's message was not embraced or adopted by the mainstream media in the United States. Instead, extensive negative coverage in American media outlets led to widespread bias against Miles. His Twitter account was permanently suspended on August 17, 2018.
Is there any pressure from the Chinese government to block his account?
No, Senator. We reviewed a report on that account and analyzed it through regular channels using our regular procedures. The blocking was not of the account in its entirety, but I believe was of specific posts that violated our policy.
So you can testify today that you did not come under pressure from the Chinese government or any of its representatives or people working for them to block his account or to block whatever it is you blocked?
I want to make sure I'm being precise and clear. We did receive a report from representatives of the Chinese government about the account. We analyzed that report as we would any other.
Despite attempts to silence him, Miles's voice echoes, unaffected by the closure of social media accounts and rejection by mainstream journalism. Miles isn't fighting alone. He's supported by millions of Zhanyo, which means the fellow fighters, who have forged a formidable alliance. On June 4, 2020, the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square incident, Miles embarked aboard the yacht Lady May to the mouth of the Hudson River with the Statue of Liberty in the backdrop. Here, they announced to the world the establishment of the new federal state of China.
我用鲜血，我们要在这个世界上用我的鲜血来捍卫我们追求的法治、自由、有尊严、有体面的中国。
This marked the realization of a long-held dream for every Zhanyo, the fellow fighters. They finally had their own alliance, the new federal state of China. Meanwhile, those who deal with the devil have had their fate sealed with a price tag. On January 27, 2018, following an article in the Wall Street Journal about sexual harassment of female employees, Steve Wynn announced his resignation as the finance chairman of the RNC. On May 17, 2022, Wynn was sued by the Department of Justice for violating federal laws by engaging in illegal lobbying and failing to register as a foreign agent. On April 13, 2018, the Wall Street Journal would also uncover another scandal involving Elliot Broidy, the vice chairman of the RNC. He was accused of paying $1.6 million in hush money to a model for an abortion. Consequently, Broidy resigned from his position. On October 6, 2020, federal prosecutors charged Broidy with acting as an unregistered foreign agent, aiding the CCP in lobbying the White House to repatriate Miles. He later confessed to his crimes in a plea deal, but was pardoned by the president. Now, the fate of the CCP officials, Liu Yanping, Sun Lijun, and Fu Zhenghua, have also come to a deserving end due to the escalated power struggles. Still, soldiers march because the battle continues. The CCP imposed a fine of nearly $13 billion for alleged coercion in 2018. They also seized $5 billion in Hong Kong assets belonging to Miles and his family, representing the largest, most abusive monetary penalty ever imposed in China. The storm continues to churn toward Miles and his anti-CCP global endeavors. That's a story for another time.